Good afternoon, everybody. How you doing? Welcome to the Wisdom of the Way. I will be your guide today. My name is Renz, and we're going to talk about life and death. Life and death. So I was sitting in the gym earlier today, and I'm looking across, and I'm noticing all the people that are in the gym. I had this great awareness today at the gym. One part is because I've trained myself to be that way, but another part is because I did a short meditation before I went to the gym, and then a longer one once I got home. But the short meditation gave me enough awareness that I started to notice every person at the gym and what they were doing and how they were looking, the emotions, the body language. I was noticing the breeze that was in the building, the temperature, the way the machines felt, the way my clothes felt on my body. I was noticing pretty much everything. I had great sensory acuity going on today, but I'm noticing the people and how they look and what they're thinking. And the body language just would suggest that some were going through hard times, some were going through great times. Most were just normal. It is what it is kind of life. But I'm just looking at all these people, and then an older gentleman kind of struck me. He's in there, he's working out. And he had this look on his face. This look of an awareness that his years were shortening, that death was not something that was a long time for him. You know, not to say that he will die soon or he looked decrepit. It's just the expression on his face had the look of somebody who was counting the minutes, the hours, the days, the months. And he could have a sickness, could have an illness, could have just heard something, could have witnessed someone in their family just passing away. And that made me think even further about life. How do we live? We live in a way that we know who we are. We think we do. We peer through our eyes and we see the world and we have our perception and we go about our day and we make our decisions and we have people in our lives and we have things that we like, things we don't like. We are ourselves. But I often wonder, and this is a question I've asked myself for decades. Why am I? Why am I me? Why do I perceive the world the way I perceive it? Why does it look the way it does? Why am I living out my life the way that my life is being lived out? I've made decisions, I've had choices, and those choices have led my life in different pathways. And I know our life evolves based on our choices and decisions and actions that we take. But I'm thinking about other people as I see them move about the gym. They are all going on to live their own life. Why do they have their consciousness and I have mine? Why am I myself? Why are you you? Why do you have the consciousness that you have? Why? What? You were born, but why you? It's a question. So it's a question of consciousness. And I thought for a minute, are we all living in inception? Are we all living a shared dream that we're all functioning in based on rules that are governed by natural law or rules governed by, as some would say, the matrix? Are we all in a shared delusion? Or is this reality? This is third dimensional reality. This is the reality that we have at this level. So I'm asking this question. And I'm thinking about death. Then I'm driving down the street. I'm thinking about death again. And then I think, death is bull. Pretty much. Death is bull. Because death goes against all natural law. Even if this was a delusion, even if this was a fabrication of the matrix, this delusion still holds the laws of thermodynamics. It still holds the laws of energy. The natural law still works. We are still energy. But what is our consciousness? Are you telling me that at the moment of death, every aspect of our consciousness just disappears? Now, for those who are religious, they'll say, well, no, you either go to heaven or hell based on what you have done at this level of understanding, this level of life. But first, let's stay with death. Death doesn't make sense. Because one of the laws says that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, which means that my consciousness, my life, has always been here. Sure, this poverty of the flesh of the body may change, and so does consciousness. It has changed. It was something long time ago before it came to dwell in this carcass. And then after this carcass is part of the earth, it will go on and live a whole nother level, a whole nother life, and whatever dimension or travel it goes to, which some may call heaven, some may call hell. So that made me thinking about heaven and hell again. And if you've seen my other video, I talk about that heaven and hell are both in the kingdom. So heaven and hell is your conscious state of mind at the moment that you leave this poverty of the flesh. So I'm thinking a little deeper about that. And the fact is that we 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 have allowed other people to tell us what heaven is and how we get in. But at the end of your life, you will choose, at the end of this understanding, because I don't want to call it life, at the end of this understanding, this conception, this perception, you will determine your heaven or hell. Your consciousness will go wherever it has been trained to go. So my question is, where have your consciousness been trained to go? Is it trained to go to heaven? Is it trained to go to hell? Is it trained to reincarnate and come back in another form? Is it trained to just exist in emptiness? Is it trained to just be, as an atheist would say, and not exist at all? But of course, if based on that, it would not necessarily, it would still exist, but what you would have to say is it's fragmented. If you were an atheist, you would have to say that your consciousness become fragmented, not cohesive anymore, and then no longer exist as a cohesive unit, but then spreads all around and becomes connected to other consciousness. Because the fact of the matter is, if that's true, then that consciousness has to attach itself to other consciousness. Is this where we get schizophrenia from? Is this where we get different sides of our personality? Are you who you are because at the moment of death, of what we call death, people's consciousness from thousands of years ago has splintered and attached itself to current consciousness. Attached itself to current consciousness that has cohesion. But no, that wouldn't do either. I mean, let me not say it wouldn't do. Maybe it's possible, maybe it's not. But I don't think it would be. Because my consciousness had to have existed in its complete form long time ago. Which means that it will still continue to exist in its complete form today. One of the thought processes that science has not figured out completely, like religion comes from the idea that people looked up and couldn't figure out why this person died, why the Halley comet flies through the sky, why does the earth revolve, why does the sun come up and then it goes back down. And religions were created based on this lack of understanding the scientific community. But then as alchemy and science has grown, we come to understand these things, and so then religion shapes and forms in order for it to fit. No one has proven or disproven that hell or heaven exists. So the next thing is for us to, is it, one person said, will our consciousness sit and wait, dormant, waiting for man to figure out where heaven and hell is, and then once man does, we'll be able to use mechanism to pull man's consciousness into that heaven? It's an interesting thought, but there again, that puts man in control of everything, and I don't necessarily believe that man has that level of control. We can figure things out, but to create something of that magnitude, I'm not going to exist on a server. I don't believe that's possible. But what I do believe is that, well, let me not say it's not possible. We may one day be able to transfer your consciousness into some robotic form. I do believe that that may be possible one day. That man will figure out the frequencies that's necessary in order to move your consciousness. But the question still remains, at some point, your consciousness won't be able to be moved. At some point, you'll be in a robotic state and some issue will happen where your consciousness won't be able to be transferred into another form, and then all of a sudden it's just gone. And where did it go? How would they be able to, can we retrieve it? Can we find it? Is this what we call ghosts because they're consciousness that are floating around with no place to go? Don't it? That's the question. I mean, it's a very deep, thought-provoking question that I don't have the answer for, nor does anybody else. We try to create it with our religious jargon of heaven and hell. If you do A, B, and C, then your consciousness will go to D. But that doesn't necessarily hold true, because that has been a story that's been told for generations to generation to generation, changed and changed over and over again. Then cultures and different cultures and aspects of the culture have changed it. So, I mean, if you're Christian today, then what about all those generations of people whose consciousness ceased to exist in the poverty of the flesh long before Christianity ever came out, long before Islam ever came, long before any of these religions have ever come? Where have those people's where have their consciousness gone? See, religion doesn't have an answer either. I guess what we can do is ask God. We can speak. We can talk to God. We can speak, just have a conversation. But at the end of the day, we're really not going to know until that time comes. So what is there for us to do? Does that mean that we can do like some of the people who are the Satanists and say that, do what thy wilt, which is something they took from Aleister Crowley and changed it and ripped it up into something that he didn't actually mean for it to be? Or is it like people like Plato, who said that the moment man needs rules and laws dictate what he needs to have in order for man to be just, that we've already degenerated into a mob, into heathens, basically. So the idea is this: we know what a righteous man and woman is. And it's not even a man or woman, really. We know what a righteous consciousness is. Because a righteous consciousness will cause us to be righteous in our poverty of flesh in this form. Where we start to live outside the flesh and start to live inside the spirit, inside the consciousness of who you are. When we live inside the consciousness of who we are, we can't help but to be great people. We can't help but to help people. We can't help but to help ourselves. We can't help but to do the things that we know that are right for us, that we know that's right for the rest of humanity. We know that then we can't destroy the earth. We can't destroy our water and destroy our air. We know also that we can't destroy one another. I do believe all the great books do tell us these things are basic things that we should take care of one another, love each other as you love yourself. But there's always going to be this idea, this thought of, what happens next? Where do I go? What do I need to do to ensure I go to the right place? And we're going to look for other things to get us there. When the truth of the matter is, we don't have to look for other things to get us there. All we have to do is look inside ourselves and see the trueness of who we are. You are a spiritual being, 100%. You are a spiritual being that's on this journey of poverty of the flesh to learn more about who you are as a spiritual being. And I believe that as we learn who we are as spiritual beings, then we will cease to come to this existence and then go to the next existence. That man is not the one that's creating the next level of existence that has already been created by the Creator. This is why Jacob had dreamed of a ladder of different levels and spirits descending and ascending. This is why in in Islam, it talks about how Allah has created the 7 heavens, because there are different levels of understanding, different levels of places that your consciousness can go that has already been created and is sitting there waiting for you, but it's waiting for your mind to be open, to be clear, for your single eye to be clear, for your chakras to flow, so that you'll know exactly who you are, for you to release all your earthly attachments and be able to take in the fullness of your consciousness, so that you can then start tapping and getting into the consciousness of the Creator. You know, the first time I shot this video, I talked about how I developed over these years this sensory perception of getting into a state where I can feel pretty much everything around me. I can feel the energy of things. When I look at a tree, I don't just see the tree, I see the energy of the tree. And it's not like in Hollywood where you see flowing through, that sort of thing. But there is an aura that you see. And there are those who they train to do that. And I don't doubt them. I don't doubt them. But when you're feeling everything, when you're connected with the world, when you connect with people that way, when you connect with yourself that way, when you connect with the Creator that way, then the world becomes a much easier place for you to deal with. The gentleman that I saw in the gym, the older gentleman, looking like life is just giving him a sack of rocks. I believe he's missing a connection. He's missing a connection. And we seek after it so much that we run to everything we possibly can to find it. Well, I'm telling you that the place you need to run to is yourself. Run inside yourself. Run to you. If you run to you, I believe you'll find that connection. If you start looking inside yourself, looking inside here, you'll find that connection. Get to the point where you fall in love with you. Fall in love with who you are. For years, I wasn't in love with who I am. And for years, I suffered. But for all the decades that I've been in love with who I am, I have seen way more joy than I have seen sadness. And even in the sadness, I have found joy. So I implore you to look inside yourself, to take the time to meditate, to spend time just focusing in on the breath that comes into your body. And soon we'll talk about breath and the importance of breath and the real meaning of breath. That oftentimes when you see it says spirit, it really means breath. So take some time, sit down, and bring in that breath of life. Bring it in, because it's not just about life. That prana is about energy. That prana is about awareness. That prana is about you being able to feed your spirit and your consciousness. So y'all have a great day. This is the Wisdom of the Way. I'm just your guide, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this. Please subscribe. It'd be awesome.